start by asking you,
Sure.
what do you do around here?
Well, I guess I could talk first about some of my research program and talk later about the administrative role at the Odum Institute.
Great.
And in terms of research, I do research in a variety of areas. Probably my primary areas would be social science statistics, and in particular an area called structural equation modeling. In substantive areas, I again work in a variety of areas, some in population research, some in what's called political sociology, also has overlap with political science, and this is looking at democratization of nations and attempting to measure that, attempting to try to predict factors that would have an impact on that. So those would be how I would describe my major research areas.
This democratization across nations, how do you begin to gather information on that?
That's an area that actually has been a subject of empirical research, quantitative empirical research, for probably, you could date it to almost a half century now.
Wow.
In the early 60s were some of the very early studies that were looking at it. I've been involved with it since my master's thesis, actually. Back in 1975 is when I first started looking at this. And a lot of my attention has been addressing this challenge, I think, that was implicit in your question, is how do you measure something like that? And there are a variety of experts who have put out ratings, expert ratings of different characteristics of democracy, things such as how free is the media in a country, how fair are the elections, how open are they, are there restrictions on opposition to the government, how frequently are elections held, what's the suffrage like. So a wide variety of characteristics, and part of the issue with this is that since some of these data do come from judges, experts, that anytime humans are involved, there's the chance for biases to enter those ratings. So what I've concentrated some of my work on is how to pull apart what part of those expert ratings are due to biases that are in the judge versus what part of those ratings are something that replicate across different judges and seem to have a common origin and you hope are valid measures. And so this is where my interest in the structural equation models that I mentioned and my substantive interest overlap. The techniques that I look at are techniques that address how to measure difficult concepts like this without assuming that there's absence of measurement error. So you can explicitly include measurement error with these techniques, systematic error, which might be caused by biases in judges, as well as purely random error.
Right.
So in these efforts, and some of this has been collaborative research too, I should mention, we've been able to pull out the biases that are in different judges, estimate the degree to which it exists for different countries, and pull out the part that's not due to bias, which we hope is the actual estimates of liberal democracies in different countries.
That's fascinating. It seems just incredibly complicated, and being able to make sense of this mass of information that individually might be subjective in some objective way is quite a contribution.
Oh, thanks. It is a never-ending source of interest to me, just to try to pull these apart. And so, yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, part of it's a lot of these things you have to have an integration of substantive knowledge of the area along with the statistical techniques. The statistical techniques alone aren't very helpful. You have to build a model of how you think these things are operating and then see whether this model corresponds to your data, the information that's going into it, which are the ratings. And by looking at the correspondence between those two, you can get some sense as to whether you're actually doing a decent job of describing these data. So if you put together in a model something that just doesn't correspond to the reality as represented in the data at all, you'll get some statistics that will reveal saying there's too big a gap between these, or there's problems in this model.
Right.
So it's not adequate.
So this is actually an interesting example of where cross-disciplinary collaboration is really so crucial. you mentioned the political science connection before, so having the sort of domain
Right.
knowledge as well as the statistical knowledge is really an important aspect.
I think it's like a lot of different areas in the social sciences now, and outside the social sciences, where interdisciplinary research is becoming more common and more crucial. So a lot of the literature that I might look at or review could be written by sociologists, could be written by political scientists, even some economists are getting involved in this area of looking at democratization of countries. And of course the methodology that's applied, that I'm using, has received a lot of developments within psychometrics, so in psychology, as well as econometrics and sociology. So all of these things are drawing on knowledge developed in other areas.
Yeah, even in my own field of information science, we're starting
Right.
to see some dissertations using structural equation modeling for modeling complex interactions among, say, citation patterns across different authors and different disciplines. So, you're having some influence in the information science area as well.
Oh, well, thanks. I think a lot of it is just the power of the models that are there. They continue to enter a lot of different disciplines, and there's been numerous people that have contributed to the development of this broad general set of techniques. In recent years, it's been spreading now into the natural sciences as well. Ecology, ecological studies, some in biology. There's been some work there. So it's fun to see it spread across the different areas.
It's not my area of expertise, but I'm curious about this term, a latent variable. It sounds provocative. These are things variables we don't know about somehow, or what does that mean?
Well, it's a good question. In fact, it's interesting in some fields. Just that very term, the latent variable, is enough to put people off from it completely. I've been dealing in this area, the structural equation modeling, latent variable modeling, for so long that I have seen fields change in their attitude. For example, biostatistics. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you said something about latent variables, they would see this as sort of totally voodoo type of work. In some quarters, more traditional quarters, that still would be the attitude, but you are seeing major movements in using latent variables in their models. Now, what are they? Basically, the latent variables are variables that we can't easily measure directly. So just to give you some examples, intelligence would be a variable that has some importance. We talk about it all the time. But we have no perfect measure. We have IQ tests, but the IQ test is not the same as human intelligence. We think it's something beyond that. The democracy variable, of course, that I'm talking about is a good example of a latent variable where we're not going to have perfect measures for it, but hopefully we'll get some measures that will have some relationship to it so that we can gain some information on it. Information overload, the value of a good, all of these things, most of the things, the concepts that we deal with, when you look at the attempts to measure them, people would say, well, there's measurement error in this. This measure is not far from perfect. So really the latent variable is a variable that corresponds to a concept in a substantive area, but it's a concept for which we don't have any individual variable that can perfectly measure it. And so the latent variable techniques enable you to build models where you say, I have this variable that's of substantive interest. I have this variable that's self-esteem, let's just say. I have some indicators that are supposed to measure the self-esteem of an individual, but I don't believe that these indicators are perfect measures of it. So when I build my model, let me separate the measures from the latent variable I'm trying to measure. And so you can study the relationship between latent variables, controlling for the measurement error that's in the indicators that you might have to tap into them. So if you had a theory, let's say that socioeconomic status was related to the self-esteem of an individual, you could get some indicators of socioeconomic status, no one of which is a perfect measure of it. And for self-esteem, you could get some indicators of self-esteem, no one of which is a perfect indicator, perfect measure of it. And you could study how those two latent variables relate to each other, controlling for the measurement error that's in the variables that are in the data set that you're using. And then you can check how well you're describing the data with various statistical tests that are available in this area.
That's fascinating.
It's really driven by an adequate theory, idea of how the world's operating, some data that will at least let you partially get at these latent variables, and then a test of how well your model does that you think corresponds or explains these things, explains the data that you've observed.
That's really fascinating. It's much more sophisticated than the latent semantic analysis or indexing that we tend to do in information retrieval that uses co-occurrences both within documents and across documents. And it sounds like this might be something that would have some rich application in the field of information
Oh, that's interesting.
retrieval.
So that would make a lot of sense, so that there's sort of a common theme that you're searching for on these things. And
right, so that if you enter a term, it's not just that the term doesn't have to occur in that document, it'll still be retrieved because of the co-occurrences both within the document and across the documents that sort of suggest that this document may have something to do with that term. But it's not as sophisticated, I believe, as what goes on in structural equation modeling, because it's really a brute force kind of technique rather than being based on some real language model.
although what you're doing, from what you describe, I could easily imagine that you have an iterative process where you look at how people are searching and what they're putting together, and sort of educate the algorithm.
I wish we did. I think it has been a pretty much one-shot, sort of a singular value decomposition kind of approach. But I think people are now starting to look at it in a more sophisticated way. So maybe there'll be some more synergy between our respective fields. I wanted to shift a little bit to a more general sort of question about the mass of electronic information that is available in the social sciences nowadays. And what do you think this is sort of doing to our concepts of democracy, or these latent variables that are so important to us?
Well, I think that the ready availability of information is like many technologies, where it can be used in a positive way or a negative way. It can have a democratizing influence in that just about anybody with access to the web or the internet would be able to find more information they otherwise could not find. On the other hand, to the degree that people can track what you're doing, there's the privacy issues and everything that goes along with that. So I don't think there's any easy way to describe it as totally opening up, liberalizing, the society, or leading to a totally repressive one. I think it is posing a challenge. If you look at other countries, it is posing a challenge for more repressive regimes in terms of people finding ways around the censoring of the information on the internet and having workarounds on that, and so they're getting more information they otherwise would not get. But to the degree that they can monitor what people are doing, on the internet, it may have some negative impact. Right. I guess if I was to guess on this, I would say that's probably a net positive impact in terms of an opening that's occurring, but nothing to be taken for granted. Right. So.
I tend to agree. I think you're right about that. It's really too soon to tell what this all means. Okay, let's shift a little bit to the Odum Institute and this sort of wonderful collection of data and services that the Odum offers. Can you talk a little bit about what it is?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The Odum Institute, as you mentioned, is it's the oldest institute at the university, but it's also the nation's oldest multidisciplinary social science university-based institute. And we've been around since 1924. And in some ways, I guess you could present it as just fulfilling the same functions as a university. That is, there's a research function, there's a teaching and training function, and there's a service function. But what we do is we specialize more toward the social sciences and social scientists on campus, broadly defined. And also we put more of an emphasis on doing things that an individual department would find difficult to do. So we're not here to just service a single department in some unique way. We look for things that we can do that will help many departments. Some examples of this. In the training area, we regularly have a series of short courses ranging from a couple of hours to 5-day workshops, full-day workshops, to full semester courses that we teach. And they are in courses that we would have people coming from a lot of different disciplines to take. Statistical software would be a good example. Sociology doesn't need a separate course on SAS, a statistical system, or Stata, another statistical system, because political scientists, SILs, economists, the rest of them all could use it. So if we just offer it here, we can service a whole lot of departments at once.
Right.
We also try to alert our people to more current methodologies that are being developed, whether it's GIS, Geographical Information System type software, or qualitative software where you can read field notes that are typed up and look for patterns in that sense. So we're appealing to a broad variety of methodologies and topics. What they have in common is that they are techniques, ideas that would appeal to people from more than just one discipline. Along that same education type theme, we have faculty working groups, as you know, because you've participated in them, on a variety of topics, ranging from the internet and the social sciences, which is one that you've participated in, to Mediterranean society, which is a group of other social scientists who have an interest in that common area, and we provide some support for them. We also have, and perhaps most relevant to the information theme of your interviews, is an archive, one of the world's largest non-governmental archives of social science data. And this archive we've maintained for some time now. And what this does is it collects together studies from surveys, from government statistics, etc., that is social science relevant data, and it makes sure that they're preserved and documented so that people can access them and use them. So we have, I think I have the number perhaps, yeah, we have 55,000 files as part of our archive. And we have archivists on staff who can help people who want to use these data. And we actually have some other projects that we are joining in that are with other institutes, trying to bring together some different groups. One, again, that you're familiar with and that you have your own project, separate project on, is called Data Pass. And this is a project that is intended to preserve social science data sets that are in danger of being lost or damaged in some other way or lacking documentation. And this is sponsored by a Library of Congress award, and we're working with some of the other major archives in the nation. ICPSR in Ann Arbor, Michigan, the Roper Center at University of Connecticut, National Archives, and the Harvard MIT Data Center. We're all partners in this common effort to find these data sets, bring them together and preserve them, document them, etc. Another fun part of that project is that this has stimulated us to create a common catalog so that we can bring together the collections from the world's major social science data archives and have them be searchable in one place. And in fact, we have a prototype up on the web right now, so you can literally just type in a topic that you're interested in, and you can simultaneously search all of these archives and find out what data sets have information on that, and then dig in deeper to individual questions in some cases.
Wow, that's fascinating, and it should lead to much better access to the world at large to the rich data that's been collected over the last 50 years or so.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think the convenience of just going to one place is terrific.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and the cooperation among the different archives has been great. So we're really pleased with how that's going.
Now the Odum Institute also sort of conducts surveys or works with other organizations to actually collect data as well.
That's true. Another function we have is in the collection of information, of data. We have a survey research unit, and as part of that we offer what's called the Certificate Program in Survey Research. And this is a program we just started a couple of years ago, and we already have approaching 60 people enrolled in it.
Wow.
We've had our first group graduate with the certificate, that sort of thing. And we teach a variety of short courses as well as semester-long courses. And we do this, again, in cooperation with a lot of groups. We are cooperating with the Joint Program in Survey Methodology that is based at Maryland and Michigan. And so we will be teaching those courses where we'll have our instructor here over in Peabody Hall, which is at the School of Education, where they have the distance education facility. So we'll have our instructor and some students there. And at the same time, College Park in Maryland will have their instructor and their students, and we'll just go back and forth and which instructor is speaking that day, and the instructors will fly back and forth to get to meet the other group of students that are part of the class. And so we do that. We also get a lot of help from the Research Triangle Institute, which is another institute that's in this area, very close to us, where they provide some of the instructors for us. And we are able to have some of their students and staff participate in this, and some of the first people to receive the certificate were from RTI. So that's worked out very nice through the cooperation of a lot of different groups. And we do collect our own data. We have a telephone call room, a small one, where we've conducted a number of surveys. We're gearing up for a big longitudinal survey that'll start this fall on religion among the youth. And we did the earlier wave, and we're gearing up to do the next wave of data collection. And increasingly so, we've been bombarded with questions on web surveys and been supporting web surveys on campus. So we've been impressed with the growth of that area.
If only people would respond more. This is I like the analogy that the Odum Institute is like sort of a university within a university. I hadn't actually thought of it that way. That's actually quite helpful. Well, this is really fascinating, and we very much appreciate your thoughts and time, and wish you continued success.
Well, thank you.
In both your research and administrative roles.
Well, I wish you success with the project. Sounds like a good one.
Thanks, Ken.